GameStop has always had certain troubles. They've not really done a very good job valuing used game buybacks, and they've often shafted people who have brought in perfectly fine copies of games with like,
I will give you $7.50.
$750? That's great, dude.
No, I meant $7.50.
and then they turn around and sell for like $17. Yeah. But forget them valuing games incorrectly. When they tried to sell their own company, they couldn't value that correctly either. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about why GameStop isn't able to trade itself. GameStop, a place where you stop to get games and also freak out. There is a subreddit dedicated to public freakouts, and a pretty large portion of them happen in GameStop. It may be because a lot of the time they're quite frustrating when you bring in a game to trade. I've certainly brought in games to trade at GameStop and thought, you know what? I'm gonna keep it. I just won't buy like a coffee or something. Maybe 2 coffees. Where am I buying coffee? I don't know. Point is, 1 or 2 coffees is enough to cover that game. And that's outright silly. So last year, on May 14th, Michael Mahler, the CEO of GameStop, who had been GameStop CEO for just 3 months, taking over after the longtime previous CEO died, left the company for personal reasons. He had actually been with the company in other positions for quite a while, but he had only been CEO for 3 months. So as it turns out, the personal reasons were that GameStop was attempting to sell itself. And as it turned out in June, it announced it was in talks with buyout firms because it had drawn a fair amount of interest. Now, they didn't sell immediately, and that meant that they had to post their earnings at the end of the year when they were still owned by themselves. And when you include a sale of a company that they owned, a company called Spring Mobile that brought in $700 million, which isn't a small amount of money, might I add. GameStop still came in with a loss of $488.6 million. So if they had not sold Spring Mobile, they had probably been dealing with a loss of over $1 billion. When you consider their revenue, which is the money that comes in before all of the losses and stuff kick in, when you consider that is just under $10 billion, they've lost a lot of money. And obviously, when you report that at the end of the year, people going, we'd like to buy you, start just going away, that is. Early January this year, it was being talked about that by mid-January there could be a GameStop sale announced. And then at the end of January, which is only a few weeks later if you know how months work, they announced that they couldn't sell themselves. They called off the plans for selling the company, which possibly would have been something that may have steered them in a better direction, let's just say. And the company released a statement saying, due to the lack of available financing on terms that would be commercially acceptable to a prospective acquirer, they won't be selling it. This news was accompanied with them losing over a quarter of the value of the company. But the point is, they just can't seem to understand how to sell themselves, which is shocking considering GameStop, if you exclude the primary retailers like Walmart and Amazon, is the biggest games retailer in the world. So what have they missed? Why aren't they selling this company that they know they need to get somebody else in control of to rescue the whole shebang? Well, for one, let's go back to the used game thing. I was very generous when I said you could trade in a game for $5 and buy the same game for $17. If it's a newer game, it can literally be almost as expensive as the actual game. That's just free money for GameStop. There's a reason why one would buy a used game. It's because they know that it should cost less because it's been owned already. It's a product that exists purely as a traded commodity at this point. It doesn't benefit the original developer in any way, so it's not contributing to the actual expenses of the game. This, in theory, should bring the price of the game way down, but GameStop sort of arbitrarily decided that if a game is less than a year old, it should be maybe $5, $10 cheaper. Maybe. I've seen them like $3 cheaper. It's silly. And if you wonder where their billions in revenue comes from, well, there you go. That's a big margin. Considering if a customer brought in a fairly new game, they do not give the kind of money that they sell them for after giving a paltry sum away to that game exchanging person. And the thing that's interesting about that is it's kind of the same thing as them selling the company. I mean, GameStop is more or less a bunch of old game companies, EB Games, Babbage's, various record stores, which is interesting. And it's kind of them buying all those companies used and then trying to sell them at a premium to a new buyer. Apparently not a business model that scales well. And I'll tell you the reason they need to sell. It's because they can't figure out how to make money and all their crap is old. So they started a service, or tried to start a service, called Power Pass, which was actually a great idea, in my opinion, from a consumer opinion. It's a $10 a month games rental service that basically lets you grab anything out of the used games, and every 6 months you get to keep one of them. I like that. I think that's a good value, and it's basically free money for them, because, I mean, somebody doesn't bring back a game, they've already given GameStop $60 because you pay every 6 months, and that definitely covers a used game that they got for like $10 at a maximum. That program, which I think probably would have kept people coming into GameStop, where they could easily sell gaming merchandise, which would have been basically a good business model, I think. They shut down after less than a week, supposedly because the computers that they used to run the store couldn't handle the demand. There were too many transactions, they were going too slow, and they were creating a bad customer experience, which would then translate over to people not using the service and then probably not coming in, which would have been the thing that I think probably would have been of boon. That's a great service. That's a great idea. Have a store that is a gaming culture store that has a very good rental service that's not very expensive, and you get to keep one of the games every few months. So its main attempt at innovating crashed and burned. Also, the Elite Pro program, which more or less was one of their rewards tiers for their reward program that offered some pretty good discounts. Yeah, they ended that too. It just seems like all of the incentives to go shop at a physical game store are disappearing pretty quick, as they can't seem to figure out a way to make them sustainable. Also, the PC game market is growing. I mean, really growing. Between the new competition between Steam and the Epic Game Store, and the fact that a digital download is pretty much the most convenient way to buy a game, more people are buying them that way because it's faster and you don't have to go anywhere, and it's the closest to Netflix there is with gaming. Also, if you want a physical copy of a game, you can buy it from Amazon and have it in 2 days, which is not really that long. You don't have to do anything outside of your daily routine. You just have to press a button on Amazon.com, and a couple days later you get your game. Or if you pre-order the game, it's usually the day that everybody else would have gotten it anyway. So yeah, I know none of this sounds particularly exciting, but it's just not a good time for a traditional games retailer. I brought up the idea of rebranding as a gaming culture store because, frankly, that's the best thing they could probably do. GameStop themselves haven't really done a lot to help that either. Their sales process is fairly manipulative. That's not to say their employees are worthy of any kind of negativity or harassment. They are employees doing the job the company has set forward for them, the way it has been set forward for them. And sometimes those employees are just really good and build a little community inside where, you know, there's actually a decent gaming scene. It's definitely not mandated by GameStop, but it does happen. I've seen it happen. Just don't automatically assume it's the employee's fault when there's a pushy sales process, because it's not. It's the company's fault. Point is, the customer isn't really the focus of GameStop in the way that it should be in a service economy. Maybe keeping that in mind might have helped them have a functioning company with less financial problems. Whatever. But since they're not going to be able to sell themselves, they're gonna have to figure something out. And having a place to go that would actually be interesting and fun outside of just, you know, buying games might be an interesting and fun thing to do, oddly enough. Also, they sell all the games at MSRP, and like, I buy new games off Amazon sometimes, and they're almost never that. So yeah, there's not really a happy ending for this one. GameStop doesn't know how to make a company that people want to go to, and therefore They don't know how to make a company that people want to buy either. And that's not good for them. What do you think GameStop should do? Should they basically change their company so that it's worth something so they can sell it? Or should they change their company so that people go to it and it's a profitable company? Like, either way, they're gonna have to change. Click like if you like this video. If you're not subscribed, now is a good time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, the subscription. So click subscribe and click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanx.